I hope am I audible to all of you. Hello and welcome to Anantam IS. Today we start with the current affairs program. The idea is to go live with the newspaper analysis, mainly the Hindu. And there are two kinds of solutions which Anantam IS has come up with. As you know that there are some people who are text friendly, जिनको text में पढ़ना अच्छा लगता है, तो उनके लिए text based current affairs आ रहा है. मैं बताता हूँ कैसे उसको एक्सेस करना है. एंड देन दे आर पीपल हु वांट analytical approach, explanatory approach, where they want a teacher to come in the form of a video and explain the nuances of newspaper. So obviously for that, this current affairs program will be done live on our YouTube channel. So first, let's take a look as to how you can now use the text based current affairs on our website, which is anantamis.com, isanantam.com, where if you go to this particular website, you can see that there is a section about current affairs where you can just go to the daily current affairs, click on that particular tab, and then you will see first the heading, the screenshot of the Hindu newspaper or Indian Express, whichever it is, then the context, and then you can see whatever you need for the UPSC examination is published there. So this is we did not announce it, but we were surprised. We were pleasantly surprised that a lot of the people had already started using the website for current affairs needs, which is essential for the UPSC preparation, especially mains. When it comes to something like Daily News Simplified or the current affairs program, we have decided to change it a little bit in a way. You have seen us doing Daily News Simplified on a daily basis continuously for 8 years, and you have highly appreciated it. So many selected candidates have validated our efforts. But while doing Daily News Simplified, we started realizing that more often than not, there's not so much of news articles to give a very detailed analysis on a daily basis, and also it keeps you hooked for 1 hour every day, uh, which basically over a period of 4 or 5 months largely becomes a pointless exercise. And that is why what we have thought of is going live only on 3 days in a week and covering the entire week newspaper in a segregated manner. So today is Monday, and I'm going live on Monday. So I'm going to cover the important news articles from Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, as you will see soon. Next time, I'll go live on Wednesday, covering Tuesday and Wednesday newspaper. And then on Friday, we would cover Thursday and Friday's newspaper. And again, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday's newspaper will be covered on Monday. So, in that sense, we will go live 3 times in a week, and we will deliver the required necessary research, which is very, very essential. The problem that I see is when a lot of the students watch analysis done at 11 in the morning, they do not realize how much of the team effort goes into creating the kind of content which will make you exam ready, and not just showing the screenshot of the newspaper and then basically reading out almost the same stuff which is anyways given in the newspaper, not adding any value to the kind of required depth that is needed. So let's now begin the discussion. These are the news articles which we thought are necessary for last 3 days that have appeared in the newspaper. First, let's begin with the two of the very, very important news articles. One deals with India-US trade war, basically US-India trade war, where US has imposed 25% import duty on all exports from India, frustrated for various reasons that we will discuss. And we will do a holistic analysis of this particular topic, which is essential, especially for GS Paper 2 International Relation and GS3 Economy. And then we will go on and look at the Mahanadi river water dispute between Chhattisgarh and Orissa and what are the ramifications. So these are the two news articles in last 3 days that have appeared in the newspaper, which are worthy for the mains level analysis. And apart from that, there are four news articles dealing with Monetary Policy Committee, Hope Project in Ladakh, then Mahanadi, map location. Map location is very important, especially related to river in prelims geography. And we are going to cover the dam or the new system which will allow different power grids or power exchanges to, kind of have a collective demand and supply of one nation, one electricity market, which so far is largely fragmented between three different power exchanges, which does not allow the power discovery or the price discovery. So let's now begin with this news article. As I've already given you the context, you understand that Trump does not happens to be a reliable मित्र. ऐसा जैसा हमें बताया गया था, वो मित्रता अब समझ नहीं आ रही है, या ये वो धोखेबाजी वाली मित्रता है जो हमें धीरे धीरे समझ में आ रही है. Now, if you look at the tariff that has been imposed, you will see that tariff is not unusual. ऐसा नहीं है कि tariff कोई country पहली बार use कर रही है अपने different national aims को secure करने के लिए. Trade policy tools, especially in the form of tariff, has always been in use. Remember the time when we were a closed economy? Probably we were the country which bothered all the countries across the globe because of the very very high tariff that we imposed because of our policy of import substituting industrialization. We wanted to protect our domestic economy. So, in that sense, you can see that when a country goes for a tariff, there can be multiple purposes that can drive the high tariff economy, mainly known as protectionism, that you want to protect your domestic economy. So, for example, a lot of the countries, just one second. Hello. कहाँ है सर? Sorry, one of my teammates called and I thought it it was something related to some glitch on YouTube. Pardon me. So, so you can see that a lot of the countries use this kind of high tariff. What high tariff does is that when you impose a particular import duty on an imported goods or services, it obviously makes that particular good or service expensive as compared to other items. And as soon as the imported community becomes more expensive, it does a lot of purpose. For example, it immediately protects the domestic industries. When it protects the domestic industries, it protects the job losses which otherwise could be imminent because of the cheaper imported goods or services. At the same time, sometimes industries also resort to tariff and non tariff barriers to protect their consumers from something bad or inimical to their environment or the health. So, for example, let's say tomorrow India faces the problem of high level of obesity. And we know that there are a lot of imported goods that have a very, very high level of sugar. Now, in that condition, if India comes up with a sugar tax that if a particular item will have more than 30% of the overall or 20% of overall sugar, it will attract higher tax. That tax or the purpose behind that tax is not to protect the domestic industry, or it is not to protect the job losses, it is to protect the health of the country. Similarly, something which can be environmentally detrimental or can compromise on the security, country resort for different kinds of trade barriers. I'm not going to go into different kinds of trade barriers. One of them is import duty known as tariff. There are other non-tariff barriers also. For example, companies specify a minimum local sourcing, that a minimum production of value should be done within the local borders. Companies resort to minimum import duty. You cannot import below a particular price. Similarly, countries notify minimum standards like sanitary and phytosanitary standards, uh, which obviously sometimes will definitely appear in news, and then we will deal into all those kinds of details. However, let's first understand behind this recent announcement by Trump against India, what are the reasons that have been cited for US to take such a drastic step so as to go ahead and strike a deal with Pakistan. Now, One of the reasons that you can objectively see and quantifiable easily is that when it comes to India US trade relations, India has a very positive trade surplus as compared to US, or US has a deficit of around $46 billion. What does this mean? This means that whatever US exports to India, on top of that, India exports $46 billion worth more goods and services to US, which leaves US on a downside. And you know that Trump has been a businessman. To what extent he has been successful, we don't know, but at least every businessman is driven by the company losses and profits. And since the beginning, the foreign policy of Trump administration has been shaped by trade deficit and surpluses. So he takes trade deficit of the United States of America with every country. Every bilateral trade deficit by him is seen as a downside for American economy, which might not be true. India has a trade deficit with a lot of its neighbors. It doesn't bother India as long as overall India is positive on balance of payment side. India is able to manage a lot of investments from across the globe, and that does not borders anyone. So that is one of the reasons that has been given by US for imposing or taking such a drastic step. Apart from that, India continues to impose a lot of trade barriers which are not in the nature of tariff but hurt developed countries, specifically United States of America. You have all of our students know about the agricultural subsidies that the government of India resorts, known as minimum support prices, which serves two purposes. On one hand, it ensures the income viability for the farmers, and on the other hand, they ensure a continuous increase in the agricultural production to secure our food independence, or basically not to rely on any country even for a basic need like food. Now when that happens, India violates a very important agreement on agriculture, where all forms of agricultural subsidies are categorized into green box, which are known as non-market distorting, and amber box, which are known as market distorting. These kinds of subsidies are considered market distorting, and at some point of time every country should give up on these, which India has also promised. Right now, India has managed to secure a peace clause, but nonetheless. And so he says that when India continues to impose, or India continues to violate WTO norms, why should we be bound with these norms? At the same time, you realize that India is a partner, is a member country in BRICS. And BRICS is disliked by Trump because he sees BRICS as an association of anti-American countries, especially in last 2 to 3 years, when BRICS nations probably have indicated or have taken few steps which are in clear direction of de-dollarization of the economy, reducing dependence on dollar. What is the main reason behind dominance of US? Acceptability of dollar across the world. Now, if the acceptability of dollar declines because most of the important economies like China, like India, like Russia decide to trade in their local currencies or come up with a mechanism which make dollar unnecessary, it will reduce the usage of dollar and slowly and gradually will dent the image or the hegemony of the dollar, which Trump has clearly said that if BRICS nation take any step in the direction of de-dollarization, the Trump administration is going to impose 500% tariff on all these countries. So third reason why Trump justifies this action against India of 25% of tariff. One last reason which has irked the Trump administration deals with India's multi alignment policy, or India's stance with respect to its most trusted ally, Russia. Not only India did not participate in the sanctions, India refused not to buy oil from Russia. In fact, India continued to buy oil, although with a very reduced volumes, but India continues to maintain both energy as well as arms and ammunition relation with Russia. Now, this has been seen by US under Trump administration as kind of a funding Russia in Russia-Ukraine war. Because you continue to rely on Russia's oil, you pay Russia, the money is used against the developed countries, against the NATO, against the Ukraine. So these are the reasons because of which the Trump administration decided to put a kind of embargo, not embargo, but penalize India for these reasons. Now, how is it going to impact India if it continues? We don't know whether it will continue. We don't know whether in some time Modi administration will be able to strike another deal. But the impact as far as on different sectors in economy is concerned can be most clearly observed in some of the sectors which can be taken as a sunshine sector in India, which are new and emerging fields of manufacturing on which India was never able to perform. Recently we have seen how Apple has announced that not announced has opened its manufacturing firm. And I don't know whether you are aware of this fact or not. As far as electronic manufacturing is concerned, 40% of all iPhones that went to US last year were manufactured or at least assembled in India. And Apple just last month announced that we plan to take it to 60% in the next financial year. So more than 50% of the iPhones that were being sold in US were manufactured in India. Now, if they attract 25%, and you know, most important mobile manufacturing companies happen to be Samsung, which now increasingly relies on Indian manufacturing facility, and Apple. Both of them are going to attract the same extra tariff, which is going to make these phones uncompetitive because surprisingly, China is at the 20% tariff level. So China already cheaper manufacturing attracts 20% tariff. Indian manufacturing is a little bit costlier, and then on top of that will attract 25% tariff, is going to make this new and fledgling manufacturing sector related to electronics quite uncompetitive in US. It will make it very difficult for the Indian electronic goods and services to be consumed by people there. The next example is a stark realization as to how trade policy is a double edged sword because the next important sector happens to be pharma. All of us know that India happens to be the global supplier of pharmacy. So it's a pharmacy home. It's a pharmacy for the world, especially when it comes to generic goods, generic medicines, the medicines on which the patent has expired, and basically anyone can use that formula. And 90% in some of the antibiotics and analgesics, painkillers, India's share or Indian export share is up to 90%, which has been one of the most important reasons for keeping American medical industry relatively at a cheaper level as compared to earlier when they did not import it from Indian generic medicine manufacturers. As soon as 25% tariff will be levied, not only it will hurt India's pharmaceutical industry, but it is also going to hurt American consumer because now they will have to source, the suppliers will have to source these medicines from other places, which obviously are quite expensive. So it is going to hurt not only Indian domestic manufacturers, but it is also going to hurt American residents. Next important industry which is going to be impacted happens to be gems and jewelry business. Gems and jewelry business already operates on a very thin margin. It is it it competes on a very thin margin. It gets a very high competition from Thailand, Belgium based uh, gems and jewelry exporters. For example, in diamond cutting business, the hub of which is in Surat, Gujarat, the margins can be as low as 7 to 8%. That is what has been reported. We don't know. But exactly this is what appeared in the newspaper. Now the problem is that these two countries, they have struck a mini sort of a mini deal with US, where their tariff happens to be as low as 10%. So while the margins could be same, they attract less than half of the tariff as compared to India, and that is why it's going to be hurt. And similar is the case with textile industry, which is going to be the main cause of worry because it happens to be mega employer, unlike already automated electronic manufacturing, unlike completely automated capital intensive pharmaceutical. Textile in India or anywhere in the world happens to be quite a human intensive industry. It employs a lot of people. Most of the manufacturing in India happens to be basically driven by people and belongs to the micro, small and medium sector, unlike these where you have mega corporation taking the lead in production. uh, Students who are already well versed with a little bit of IR and have a decent knowledge would say, why can't India go to WTO and challenge such a decision by US? It's a unilateral increase in tariff, and US decision can be challenged without any problem, and WTO is going to rule against US. But this is the last nail in the coffin of multilateral institutions like WTO, which have already been left dysfunctional first by the US. WTO has a dispute resolution mechanism where the judges are appointed. US has vetoed the appointment of judges into dispute resolution mechanism or appellate body of WTO, where you can challenge the decision of one country and whatever comes out of that tribunal becomes binding on the other country. So number one is that there is no WTO which is functional, and because of that lack of functionality, WTO will not be able to put any kind of sanction on US or penalize US for such unilateral use of trade policy to hurt other countries' economy. Apart from that, WTO or General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, the previous agreement or the parent core of WTO, General Agreement on Trade and Tariff, which later on concretized in the form of World Trade Organization, already provided a national security exemption that in the interest of national security, you can violate some of the fundamental rules of WTO. What are these fundamental rules of WTO? Most favored nation. That as soon as one country becomes a part of WTO, it has to be treated equally by everyone and it has to treat every other member equally. But if your national security is threatened, then you can skip that equal treatment. For example, India and Pakistan both use the national security exemption, which is quite justified. But you cannot use it against every country. India has never threatened America's national security, but this is the exemption that currently Mr. Trump is using, which if WTO's dispute resolution mechanism was functional, India could have challenged in WTO, and probably whether or not US would be bound by that ruling or not, that remains to be seen. But at least there would have been some multilateral arrangement to at least give an order against US, but there is none. And so that leaves India in a very, very tricky situation because for a major trading partner, most important trading partner of India, India finds itself out of options to respond. So how has India responded in last 2 days? This happened on a Saturday evening. Uh, so we have today no decision has been taken. So most likely the Indian government's response has been that of a wait and watch policy. Indian government has not responded, and basically it looks like that the Indian government is going to use the methods that have always been relied upon. For example, the use of diplomacy, at the same time ensuring that we do not capitulate, we do not surrender, and we do not agree to all what Trump wants. So we are not going to capitulate. At the same time, we are not going to be like Trump and we are not going to retaliate. Because you impose 25% of us, we are going to impose 25% on you as well. That is something which is a very, very good step taken by the government of India, that we have avoided making any statement which can sound like challenging or, in the form of uh, retaliation against the Trump's policy. What Indian government has shown in past negotiations taken, for example, during RCEP. You know that we walked out of RCEP, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, at the very last moment. And why did we walk out of RCEP? Is because our core national interest, our small scale industries, did not seem to be protected because of RCEP. So, what India has shown is a resolve, is a commitment to protect our interest, and rest everything is secondary. So, India is not going to capitulate on any condition, it's not going to be unconditional, it's going to be driven by our national interests in terms of economy, economic interest, and the core of economic interest is to protect our agriculture, which in no way we are going to agree to its detriment, and micro, small, and medium enterprises. So, if Trump will be ready at some point of time to come back to India and talk, these are non-negotiable. And this is a resolve which we have shown recently when India finalized a trade deal with United Kingdom. When we finalized that trade deal under CETA, Comprehensive Economic Trade Agreement, we were very, very clear as to what our objectives were, and we did not compromise on any of the core objectives. It also took 3 years to finalize the negotiation. India waited, and obviously, UK was not headed by any person like Trump. Similarly, we probably have to wait and see how this goes. But in some time, probably America will also realize the damages that are being caused, that will be caused to America's own economy because of the drastic steps taken by Trump. So let's. I hope this would have made it clear. All right. So let's now move on to the next news, which deals with the dispute between Chhattisgarh and Odisha with respect to the river water sharing. One of the major rivers that they share is Mahanadi. So let's first get the prelim centric news or the information out of our way. You can see that Mahanadi originates very near to Amarkantak. Amarkantak happens to be the origin of many other rivers. You will have to let us know in the chat box as to what are the other rivers that originate there. What is important is that once you trace Mahanadi, then the left bank tributaries and right bank tributaries have to be memorized as it is. Because in prelims, UPSC has asked questions with respect to river. Let's go back to 2017. With reference to river Tista, consider following the source. So the source becomes important. River Rangit originate in Sikkim and is tributary of river Tista. So tributaries are also important, and river Tista flows into Bay of Bengal. So the source, the mouth, the tributaries, and the state through which a particular river, especially a major river like Mahanadi, flows is extremely essential. Similarly, with reference to the Indus River system of the following four rivers, three of them pour into one of them which joins Indus direct. You can see that when you draw the map of Jammu Kashmir, if you do not recall each and every river, and if you do not have a mind map in etched in your memory, you will not be able to solve this particular question. And that is why I want you to have a look at this for 30 seconds. Pause the video and see Sionath, Hasteo, Mand, I, Ib, and then Jok, Ong, Tail are the right bank tributaries. So this can be memorized as Jot, and this can be memorized as SHMI. Or you can create your own. I'm not here to give you acronyms. Choose, create your own acronyms, but it is very, very essential that you memorize the order in which uh, they they are being they flow. Anyways, so this is Chhattisgarh and this is Odisha. So obviously you can see that the river originates in Chhattisgarh. It is joined by four tributaries here, and eventually Tel is the last tributary that joins it, and all of the water discharges from through Odisha into the Bay of Bengal. Which means that being upstream, Chhattisgarh has the complete control over the water flow of the Mahanadi River. So whatever Chhattisgarh does, for example, the agricultural usage, diversion of water through canals, small run of the river projects, and various other domestic and industrial uses done by the Chhattisgarh is obviously going to impact the availability of the water in Odisha. And this is what Odisha has complained for the first time in 2018 when it said that what we observe is the fact that slowly and gradually the volume of water, the discharge volume of water in a fixed unit of time is continuously declining year on year, because of which it wanted the center to form a tribunal, because the constitution has provided a mechanism for the interstate river water dispute, a resolution of interstate river water dispute. Center did not pay any heed or did not show any interest to Odisha's concern. That's what happens with interstate river water dispute. Because BJP being a party ruling the center, BJP being an active contender for power in Odisha at that point of time, now in power, and also an active party contesting power in Chhattisgarh, cannot afford to anger either of the electorate, either Chhattisgarh or Odisha. And this is what has become a flashpoint, because generally the central government denies taking any kind of cognizance of any interstate river water dispute. So, which actually forced the Supreme Court to issue direction to the center to initiate the tribunalization of water dispute in case of Odisha and Chhattisgarh. The news is heartening news because it says that now they have decided that they will amicably resolve Mahanadi water row after 8 years of initiating the process of tribunalization. They have realized probably that the best way out is not to go and have an adjudicatory mechanism to settle the interstate river water dispute, but rather a better idea would be just for the two chief ministers to meet like twice or thrice and then chalk out how they are going to share the water of a river that flows through both of them only. Okay, that brings us to the discussion with respect to Article 262 of the Indian Constitution, where it has dealt it what interstate river water dispute in a separate chapter, which belongs to basically part 12 of the Constitution of India, 11 and 12, where we discuss the center state relations. So you can see that a specific attention was paid for the resolution of interstate river water. Water is a resource, but so are coal and iron and manganese and forestry. Why has been water treated, and especially interstate river water, treated very differently and separately by the Constitution of India, is because water is unlike any other resource. It flows and it flows and it varies in space and time. So when you look at a block of a coal and if you come back, the only thing that can change the distribution of the coal or reduce the quantity that's available is the usage by humans. Unlike water, which will flow, river water will flow. Its distribution is a function of space and time and rainfall and climate change and variability and usage and evaporation, urbanization, change in agriculture. So many factors determine the flow or the changes in the availability of the water. And that is why Article 262 provided two distinct clauses in one. It said that obviously because it is interstate, just like any other matter that's interstate, the adjudication will be done by the parliament by law with respect to the usage, the distribution or control of the waters, number one. And second, in the same law, Parliament may by law also provide that neither Supreme Court nor any other court shall exercise jurisdiction in respect of any such dispute or complaint. Two options were given to the Parliament, that the Parliament may make a law, not necessary that Parliament will make a law. Parliament eventually made a law for the dispute resolution arising out of it, distribution of interstate river water, and in the same law, Parliament eventually did exclude Supreme Court's jurisdiction, that is Interstate River Water Dispute Act 1956. So let's quickly see what are the issues and challenges arising out of interstate river water dispute. First, let's look at the constitutional treatment of this matter. So when you look at the Constitution of India, one of the provisions we have already seen, constitutional provisions, is Article 262. Another one is how the matter of water has been dealt in the 7th schedule. So if you go to the 7th schedule, you will see that water specifically has been mentioned on two occasions. Number one is that under the 7th schedule, it has been mentioned in list 1 as an entry number 56. That's where it says interstate river water and interstate river valleys, which means that the parliament is the competent authority to make laws on the interstate river water. Does that mean states have no power over water? Of course, it has. Under entry number 17 of the list 2, if you will read, you will see that the resolution of except for the interstate river, which means all matters related to water minus entry number 56 of the union list, which means except for interstate river water, all other matters are are under the competency of the states. So state legislative assemblies and the state government are the competent authorities to make laws in the matters that deal with water. Now, when 1956 state reorganization was done, at the same time, because we created so many new states and now it was looking like India is going to be politically stable, a need was felt to also come up with an act or the law which will now regulate the interstate river water dispute, and hence the act came. Let's look at what are the mechanisms that the act provided. Act provided for first a kind of a negotiation mechanism as soon as the center feels that a need has arisen where two or more states face problem with respect to use, distribution or control of a particular river. These states will notify the center that we are facing a problem. The center will first try to negotiate, try to settle it without tribunalizing it, without going for an adjudicatory process. The center is going to explore the opportunities for the negotiation. Once that fails, then a tribunal will have to be set up, where generally the Chief Justice of India makes retired judges of the Supreme Court and the High Court members of the tribunal, where the tribunal does the groundwork and eventually notifies the award, which becomes binding, and obviously the Supreme Court cannot intervene. Award, once it is notified in the Gazette of India, it becomes binding, and Supreme Court, you cannot reach out through any of the mechanisms, neither through Article 131 nor through special leave petition. You have no remedy. This is what the Act largely is. Now, when you read the provisions of the Act, it might look like that it is such a good provision that has been made in law which would have resolved all the disputes, but it has not. Look at Kaveri river water dispute. In late 1980s, Tamil Nadu started requesting center that the water, we have a problem with respect to the Kaveri river water sharing with especially Karnataka. In 1990s, tribunal was set up and finally the award came in 2007. Because according to Sarkaria Commission, this particular act did not have the clear-cut timelines. And because it did not have clear-cut timelines, it always created a problem where the tribunal will sit over the dispute resolution for a very long period of time. Once the tribunal finalized its award, the center would sit over the award and not notify it for a very long period of time, making the resolution of these kinds of disputes extremely difficult. So, according to that, this act was amended in 2002 to insert clear cut timelines, but still we don't see these issues being resolved, as can be clearly seen in the case of Mahanadi River. And what can be some of the reasons for it? Obviously, the act, if you read the act, It has not gone beyond the constitutional mandate of talking about use, distribution, and control. It does not specifies any particular parameters which should become or which should go into deciding the distribution of water. It does not provide for benchmark, or it does not provide for any kind of principles for the distribution of the river water. At the same time, because there is no centralized data repository with respect to the water resources across the country, because when you are going to talk about the distribution of river water, you are going to measure the flow of the water just for one season? No. Just for 1 year? No. You will have to do it continuously for multiple years. So when tribunals want extension, they are not just trying to delay it. Probably there is an intent of coming up with a good award which will last for at least 10 to 20 years. And for that, you have to measure the flow of the water continuously. You will have to measure the groundwater. You will have to look in the river basin as to how many lakhs hectares of area is under cultivation in this state, in that state, in this basin, in that basin. Only when you have that comprehensive analytics, then you will be able to come up with a award. Because India did not have any kind of data repository, it obviously, naturally, and very genuinely creates a delay. At the same time, when tribunal consists mainly of people of judicial background who might have and who definitely have good understanding of law, they are devoid of any kind of information on, for example, matters related to environment, ecosystem, issues related to hydrology, how the water behaves. What are aquifers probably would not be known to many judges because of their very separate and distinct specialization. So it creates a lot of problem there also. At the same time, there's a famous saying which goes by that water is to fight and whiskey is to drink. Water evokes probably the worst sense of regional identity from us. And this is something I've probably talked about in QIP classes, something I've talked about in foundation classes also, is that otherwise the most developed peaceful societies of Tamil Nadu and Karnataka fight with each other only once. And I'm not talking about RCB, I'm talking about distribution of Kaveri river water. So you can see the politicization of water creates the major hurdle. And at the same time, the Supreme Court has become problematic because just like all other matters where Supreme Court was not allowed to look into, Supreme Court has found an entry into the interstate river water dispute also. Let's face it, Supreme Court very frequently entertains petitions in the form of public interest litigation and intervenes into interstate river water dispute. It does not intervenes into use, distribution, or control of river. What the Supreme Court says is that there is no life without water. And so, because of the lack of award notification or because of the lack of setting up of a tribunal, if these are the reasons, we are definitely going to intervene into interstate river water dispute, and we are definitely going to force the center to set up a tribunal. We are going to force the center to issue an award, and if there is any problem with the award which deprives few people of access to water, we will not shy away from intervening into the award as well. And so you can see that it has probably become so complicated that we need to radically reform the entire interstate river water disputes legal framework. So, first, we need to have a centralized data repository which will keep on continuously collecting data with respect to river water. So, that is something we immediately need. That is something that the government also brought an amendment bill in 2019, which has now expired, which talked about creating the centralized data repository. Uh, at the same time, a lot of the time is always wasted while setting up a new tribunal every time you have a problem of interstate river water dispute. So we need a permanent tribunal which will have multiple benches. So the time that the government wastes or delays every time that a new award has, a new dispute has arisen, that will be saved. Correct. So if you want to have a detailed understanding of this issue, so everything has been written and has been published in the text format on our website, is Anantam. So you can go and read all the articles which are important from the perspective of both prelims as well as mains examination. Just one second. Hello. Hello. Am I audible? All right. So let's now go on to the news that are relevant from the point of view of prelims. Power exchange dam coupling may yield a little benefit. So, why have we taken this particular news item is because UPSC has been in the habit of asking very shallow questions, but testing your understanding of common terms, not common terms, some terms which appear with, which deal with economy, but probably you might have ignored them. Obviously, because you have to read so many things. For example, merchant discount rate sometimes seen in news, and every year there are two, three questions sometimes seen in news. So power, so dam coupling sometimes seen in news deals with, and if they write one option as it deals with the water conservation in dams, probably a lot of the people are going to mark that, but in reality it deals with the market trading or trading of electricity across India within the territory of India. So if you look at the overall sector of electricity, electricity has mainly three components. The power is produced, the electricity is produced by the electricity producers, and then through transmissions, it reaches the distribution companies, which are responsible eventually to take the electricity to the consumer. Now, this could be renewable producers like solar, wind, hydroelectricity is now also largely renewable, and then it could be coal based, nuclear based, and other sources, gas based. And then eventually, through transmission lines, these are taken to the distribution companies or what are known as discoms. In India, you have two kinds of discoms. One are public sector undertakings controlled by the state governments, and then you have private distribution companies for large urban areas like Delhi and Mumbai. So these are the companies which are responsible for ultimately making the electricity reach to the last mile. Now, uh, because distributors are not producing and producing producers are not distributing, they have to exchange electricity with money. So, for example, distribution companies have to pay to the producers to buy the electricity. The problem, however, is that the usage of electricity is extremely variable. In a peak season June, a, a rainfall of half an hour can drastically cut down electricity consumption for next many hours. And the same rainfall during the month of January can suddenly ramp up, increase the demand because a lot of the people would turn on their heaters because it's already very cold, and then on top of that there is a rainfall. So you can see that the electricity demand is very variable phenomena. It varies from one season to another. It varies from day to day. So what distribution companies do is that they know their customer base enough that they understand that this is the baseline electricity which no matter what we would require on a daily basis, because probably this is the baseline where people would turn on their fans, they would turn on their electricity, the bulbs, switches, computers, mobile phones, and industries would continue to produce irrespective of the rainfall. And on top of that, there is a seasonal variation. So the long supply of electricity which is needed on a daily basis is known as term ahead market. This long term agreement that you do because you're confident that this is something you would need every day. But what about day to day variability? And that is called DAM, day ahead market. Today you know what is the prediction for weather tomorrow. Today you know tomorrow whether there is a holiday or not, whether there is a band called by a political party or not, or whether tomorrow there is some announcement that someone has died and because of that the government has announced a probably holiday tomorrow or whatever. You know the immediate variation. You can project that immediate variation, and for that the Central Electricity Regulatory Board has provided an option that for 15 minutes batch you can place the order for the next 24 hours. So that's what companies use. For baseline they go for TAM, and for next day they go for DAM. Now this exchange, or this sale and purchase, sale from here and purchase from here, happens in power exchanges. Just like the sale of shares happen on share market, it happens on power market, where both these people meet. They tell you the supply, they tell you the demand, and the bidding happens on an every 15 minutes basis. What's the problem? The problem is that there are three different power exchanges in our country. You have Power Exchange of India Limited, you have India Energy Exchange, you have Hindustan Power Exchange. These three different exchanges probably are dealing with almost the same number of or the similar producers and similar distributors, but the discovery of price is very different, and so it creates distortion in the electricity market. Because for the next 15 minutes on one exchange, the same electricity would be sold for 3.8 rupees per unit, and in the same 15 minutes batch it would be sold for 3.2 rupees per unit. And that gives speculative edge, or that creates a scope for speculation that we don't want. We want a uniform price discovery. The same reason the government had national agricultural market, because the entire market being fragmented into multiple smaller APMCs was not allowing the national level demand to meet with the national level supply. Because of the fragmentation in the market, currently the electricity market is fragmented. Also, it creates the duplication of the effort as far as transmission is concerned, and that puts a heavy load on the transmitters. Why? Is because, let's say there is a producer, uh, let's say there's a producer in Himachal Pradesh who sells electricity to a consumer in Tamil Nadu. That electricity has to be transmitted. At the same time, coincidentally on the same day, there was a producer in Tamil Nadu who had a purchaser from Uttarakhand. So you can see that 2 gigawatts of electricity will have to be transmitted from the southern grid to the northern grid, and from the northern grid to the southern. If it were a common platform, this would have gone here and that would have gone there, taking the load away from the transmission lines. This duplication can be avoided, because of which Central Electricity Regulatory Board has come up with DAM coupling, where the idea is to create one market where a single mechanism will allow the uniform price discovery across all the power exchanges. So that will that will make the electricity market extremely efficient. Then next news is about Hope Mission, a privately funded mission. So let's not be confused. It's not an ISRO or Ministry of Department of Space led. There is a private company, Protoplanet, who has set up uh, a plant, like a module, to basically train few of the people and to gain better insight as to how the life at Mars would be. And obviously Ladakh is, we are not saying that Ladakh is Mars, but that's most closely you can resemble Mars like situation or Martian situation on Indian soil. What Martian situation is? Martian situation is thin air, clear skies. Ladakh has both of them, because it is situated on such a high altitude that the density of the air is so low that it has very clear skies. It is very arid, and so being arid deprives it of cloud formation, which is also a common trait with Mars, is also arid. So these are the common reasons because of which you would want to set up a space telescope there. It's also the reason why you would want to set up a future like a module or a capsule which would help you to learn more about what are the requirements when Pradhan Mantri Modi has decided that by 2035 we will have a space station of our own, and NASA has already decided that by 2040s we should land people on Mars. So these research would be very very helpful. At the same time, we should be very well versed with the famous lakes of Ladakh. So you can see that one is Pangong So, So Muriri, and So Kar. These are the lakes. These are the lakes which are saline in nature. What creates its salinity? That is something you are going to tell me in the comment section. So this is the first time that we are doing this after the prelims. There has been a long break in Daily News Simplified that had to be broken. So this is a part of our QIP Plus program. So we will keep on coming with the current affairs on a weekly basis, where 3 days, as I have already talked about in the beginning, for 3 days in a week, we are going to cover the newspaper, and we will ensure that all the important newspapers articles that are relevant for prelims, mains, and interview are covered in analysis. At the same time, if you are text friendly, let me reinforce that there is no need for you to watch the lectures. Probably reading the text is way faster, so you can go and read. When we publish the articles, we are very conscious that we are uh, including all the UPSC relevant exam information, syllabus mapping, PYQ. So that is, so you can see that if we have published this news article that deals with Monetary Policy Committee, why in news, and then UPSC relevance, and then UPSC PYQ that dealt with monetary policy, and so everything is covered, including the monetary policy tools, and then so you can see everything is uploaded on the IS Anantam website. So that's it for today. Thank you to all the people who have watched it, and let's meet on Wednesday and then cover newspaper of Tuesday as well as Wednesday. Thank you so much.